All right, today's topic is balance and stability. And what balance and stability means in tennis is really what your body is doing to align yourself to give you the most appropriate balance and position to be able to control your racket face. And at controlling your racket face, that means there's going to be a greater opportunity to control the ball into the tennis court. You know, a lot of times I speak to a lot of players who come to me and say, Coach, I'd like you to help me with my forehand, something like that. And what they don't realize is that 90% of the time when they ask me that question, I'm actually first and foremost going to think about what does their balance and stability look like. Because tennis is really about understanding where your body is and how the alignment is working so that you're able to control that tennis ball. And this means whether it's your forehand or your backhand, we're looking at, again, understanding and correcting what priorities are involved with balance and stability. The thing I also like to emphasize is how the kinetic chain works when playing tennis. And that's all about the energy that starts in the ground and it comes up through your legs, engages the core of your body, works its way through your arms and your shoulders and even out to your wrist. And once those components are all working together, there's a chain of movement that works to help support balance in the game of tennis. So it's important to understand how energy and how power and how strength and stability actually finds its base in the ground up. So that's why, again, 90% of the time as an instructor, I'm going to look at your stability and your balance and how you're moving to see that your racket is getting in a proper position to allow you with good balance to swing forward and make contact and hit a clean, controlled ball. So I'm going to give you a quick demonstration. There are times when I'm just out playing tennis, hitting balls, practicing with a partner. I'll hit a tennis ball and for some reason I'll lose control and it'll go just off to the right side of the court. Another time the ball comes and I'll hit it and I'll lose control again. And I'm asking myself, well, why is this happening? I know that I have an idea in mind. I have an idea where I want to place that ball, but for some reason, when I drop and hit it, it's just not quite going where I want it to go. And as that, again, becomes more and more of a concern of mine, I want to begin focusing, what do I have to do to find just the right contact point and the ability to control that ball. But I'm going to find out what's the foundation for making something like that happen. And oftentimes it is about our balance and our stability. Now, we all know that the goal is to hit the ball into the court, cross that over the net, but we also realize that we're adapting to various tennis balls that are coming our way. You see, my opponent has a goal in mind to keep me off balance. So as the ball's coming with different spins and speeds and heights and directions and depths, I'm having to adjust to all of those things. And so again, tennis is really about understanding how my body is aligned or balanced to receive that incoming ball. And as I'm thinking about keeping the ball within those boundaries, it's very important that I'm moving efficiently and moving effectively so that I can work in such a way to create more consistency. The other thing that impacts sometimes the difference in controlling the tennis ball is the racket movement. And oftentimes, you know, being as relaxed as we need to be and the ball is coming at me, I know that my racket's going to begin to change angles as I need to approach that ball. And oftentimes, as I'm attempting to make those adjustments to the ball, the racket angles become an issue or a concern for me because I haven't quite controlled those. The instinct in all of this is when you feel like the racket is a little bit out of your control, you're going to tend to want to stiffen your wrist. And when that happens, you begin to stiffen your wrist, you're going to really begin to become a lot more rigid when becoming a tennis player or looking to improve your tennis game. Some of that can look like this, is when the ball's coming, what you'll do is you'll just stiffen your wrist to control the ball. So it makes sense, right? If I stiffen my wrist, I can really control that ball into the tennis court. But what happens is it sometimes puts us in an uncomfortable position. And so now that I'm moving to hit a ball and I stiffen my wrist, my body often looks very out of position, very imbalanced. But it's, again, an instinct because we really feel like that if I just stop that wrist, you notice how I control that with this wrist muscle, then I can really get that ball into the tennis court. But when I think about, again, what's important about keeping myself relaxed and reducing as much tension as I can, what I want to try to do is learn the fundamental and the technique of being relaxed during the tennis stroke. All right, just as a reminder again, the instinct when dealing with or trying to work against that relaxed nature of playing tennis and your wrist and your racket angle is changing, again, that instinct is to stiffen that up. And when you're stiffening up again, that's going to give you the concept that this is how you're going to begin to control the tennis ball. But what it's going to do oftentimes is put your body in a very uncomfortable position. And oftentimes when you're moving and you're stiffening up, again, you feel very awkward. You don't feel like you have much balance. There's lots of tension and even panic in that stroke. So we're going to really talk about how balance really can help support staying more relaxed versus very tense when hitting the tennis ball. Okay? So today's message again is about body control and awareness of movement. As a coach and an instructor, I really emphasize when talking with students and while they're hitting tennis balls is for them to be aware of where their body is. In other words, be conscious that you're moving in an athletic way and you're putting yourself in position to create great spacing and you're looking to be very balanced at contact and relaxed. And so I start emphasizing, how does it feel when you're hitting a tennis ball? And those are some common words or phrases I use when talking to students. Gain an understanding of the feel, how your body feels in motion, when you're moving, how you're stabilizing yourself. And so as you're hitting a tennis ball, we're going to think about those concepts today and talk about that. All right, so just to continue, let's talk about body control again, awareness of your movement. There's a little tip that I like to share with you, a little practice tip even that I use on a regular basis, and it's called drop and hit, where I'll come out and I'll grab a hopper of tennis balls and I'll look for an opportunity to practice on my own, because sometimes that's what we're afforded, is just sometimes to be on your own, be on your in your own place and in position. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to find some of that energy for yourself. So this self-practice tip I call drop and hit, and it's about feeling your balance, whether or not you're in balance, looking at dynamic balance. Am I moving? Am I flowing through the stroke? And if I'm not, am I being very static and stopping my swing and really not controlling that? So I want to do that for you and give you a demonstration. And what's required is just a hopper of tennis balls. If you have that many, you could take up to 8 tennis balls out, maybe if you don't have a hopper. Maybe even a practice partner, someone who can maybe hand feed balls to you. But what you're going to do is just find an opportunity to take a tennis ball and get in a position where you're just going to receive it nice and quietly, and you're going to observe how your body feels. So in one example, I will just take a ball and I will make sure I'm in a setup position where it's kind of static to begin, but the goal is to feel how my body moves when I hit this ball. So what I'm going to do is just lift my arm about shoulder height, drop the ball gently out in front of me, swing one time, follow through, and see how my body felt. Did I feel like I was in balance? Did I feel like I rotated my hips through that shot? Did I feel like I was really focused on how I'm going to control the tennis ball by maintaining as much balance as I possibly can? I'm going to look at the distance of my feet, and the split is what we call in tennis. And I'm going to see if I'm doing all the things that help me to maintain balance. Oftentimes, this exercise can be challenging, especially when first beginning, and you'll find yourself sometimes even in a static position to begin, falling off balance. And you'll wonder why that's happening. Well, oftentimes it has a lot to do with you just not being aware of what your body is doing. So again, in many instances, the goal for many people is just to get the ball across the net. But what I want to hopefully emphasize today is that body control, controlling the tennis ball, controlling the racket face at contact is all interrelated, and they all work together. So having a hopper of balls can give you an opportunity to practice this exercise. Even on the backhand side, for those of you who are one-hand backhand hitters, here's one way again, positioning yourself appropriately. And it's going to be a little challenging here. It's a good practice opportunity. But notice I'm extending the ball again, still in front of my body. I drop it, I swing, and I'm just feeling my balance. Am I making clean contact with the ball? Are my hips, again, is my hip from the backside rotating forward? Am I stepping into the court? Those are things that you just want to be aware of, again, and working on that dynamic movement that balance, again, requires. Sometimes it's even possible to do this with a two-hand backhand. And it requires, again, a lot of practice to get the ball to bounce as you would like it to bounce to be able to approach the ball. Just a little practice. So you're feeling your body again, and you're becoming aware of what's involved in maintaining as much balance as you possibly can. So again, think about this as well. On the opposite side of the net, I will oftentimes set up targets, distances, different heights for me to work with, and I want to see if I'm also reaching and extending my racket through the entire process that supports reaching those targeted areas. Okay? So you really want to focus on your follow through when it comes to those kinds of things. So looking at my target areas across the net, I set myself with a good balance, and I'll see if I reach that target. And if I'm missing that target, I'm going to continue to work on how does my body feel when I do reach it. I felt nice and balanced when I hit that last ball. All right, now you may be asking yourself another important question. Why are you not balanced when hitting a tennis ball? We're going to go back and talk a little bit about some of the problems that come from poor balance. One of those problems is what we call an unstable base, okay? And when we're talking about your base, we're talking about how your feet are separated from one another, okay? I'm going to give you a quick analogy. Imagine as a painter, if you're learning to paint or you're painting a portrait, you're on a boat. You set up your easel, you've got your canvas there, you're painting within the lines and the numbers, and just as you begin to paint, the boat begins to rock on the waves of the ocean. And as you're doing that, you're saying, wow, this paintbrush is really a bad paintbrush because it can't stay within the lines. Well, I'm gonna tell you something, it's not the paintbrush's fault. It's because you don't have a stable base. So when, again, students come to me and say, Coach, I want you to work on my forehand, I'll tend to say, well, it's probably not your forehand's fault that oftentimes you're hitting the ball errantly. It's usually because your base is not stable. And so when we think about a stable base, we think about just having the body in a position where your feet are comfortably apart from each other, not too close together. Because when I create this kind of position and attempt to hit a tennis ball, I tend to find myself feeling like I'm going to fall backwards. So that base is important because it's athletic. And it allows me to be in a position that as I'm receiving the ball, I feel a lot more balanced. And with that balance, there's a greater chance I'm going to control the racket as it's coming forth to contact and through the follow through of the stroke. So that's what's important about that. Another problem that happens is no rotation. Here's what I mean by that. When just as I'm ready to hit the ball that's coming in from my opponent, oftentimes I'll put myself in a position where my body does not rotate. And notice I can make contact with the tennis ball, and I even may have some success getting it in the court. But without that rotation, I'm really going to have difficulty controlling that ball consistently. So I have players sometimes tell me, but Coach, my body may have been out of balance, but I got the ball in play. I say to them, well, I agree, you were successful. But what I want to help them see that is that the more their body rotates, they actually add more power and more control to the tennis ball. So it's again, what you want to accomplish, what you want to get out of this, how you want to develop your game, that's going to be very important about that as well. The other thing I notice a lot of players have problems that come up with poor balance is tension again in the body. And what I mean by that is if I'm standing tall right now and I lean forward, I feel my legs tensing up right now. My muscles are getting very rigid and stiff. And the reason they're doing that is they're protecting me from falling over. And so what happens with tennis players oftentimes, they're playing tennis and they get a lot of tension in the body. And all that tension means is that leg is just trying to hold you up at this point. So there's really no good, comfortable way to feel by just allowing your leg to become very tense when playing tennis. So it's important to do as much as you can to try to relax that tension. And the one way to do that again is to try to create as much balance so that the body works together to create a better position when receiving the ball to send it another direction. And obviously and inevitably with tension comes panic. When we panic hitting a tennis ball, oftentimes that means suddenly the ball is on us. We haven't moved well. We have a lot of tension in the body. There's no rotation. There's no stable base. And the panic sets in. And who knows what's going to happen to the ball at that moment? Because things are happening in a rapid motion in the sport of tennis. So with, again, not having balance, not having the ability to assess that as quickly as possible, it's going to lead to a lot of problems. So the other question, again, we want to answer is, why are we not balanced? Well, I'm going to share a few things that might maybe surprise some of you, but others of you, it's going to really encourage as you begin to develop your tennis game. Number one, oftentimes we begin playing tennis without developing the fundamentals. In other words, some ways to say that differently is maybe even you get out to play tennis and it's a great sport to get out on your own, to just enjoy and recreate with friends and family, and it's just a great way to, again, create some social opportunities for you. But you can also begin playing points too early, and that means you're going to start developing habits that become very challenging and very difficult to break when you do decide to go ahead and get some lessons and take learn some fundamentals of the game. So playing points too early just means sometimes you'll get out, and while you're playing, this is what it might look like. So, you're being successful, right? You're getting the ball over the net. But did you notice how frantic and how panicked and out of balance and how tense my body was? Again, I am so glad that many of you are getting out to learn this game. But I would encourage you to find an opportunity to at least speak with someone who might be able to bring you into a space, go over some basic fundamentals with you, and begin giving you a foundation for improving your tennis balance. Sometimes the only concern when it becomes playing too early is just your concern is to get to the ball. So again, when I think about that, here's what I often see for players who, again, are playing tennis without developing fundamentals. There's a tennis ball that's coming across the net from my opponent, and I just got to get to it. Looks a little frantic again, doesn't it? But again, that's very natural when you're playing tennis without developing fundamentals. So again, continue to play, get out, enjoy the game, but from time to time pause and ask yourself, would it be worth spending a little time learning some more about the fundamentals? Another thing, again, I want to reemphasize is your base. Oftentimes, it's just too narrow. And when your body, again, creates a very narrow base, your ability to swing and control the ball becomes a big challenge. So one of the things I want to do is focus on how do we determine what's a comfortable base? Because for each one of us, we're different enough that one base may be too wide for another person. One of the standards that we use for adults and even juniors today is we'll ask them to put their tennis racket on the ground and to put their feet just outside the edges, and that'll help you to, again, create a nice comfortable base. If you feel that base is too wide, maybe put your toes just on the inside and experiment a little bit. But the key here is you must create this base with consistency. And that's going to help, again, for you to develop as you position yourself to the ball and as you move to maintain the base that supports your balance through the entire stroke. So it's going to be very important, again, that you determine that base as best you can. What oftentimes happens when we have a poor base, misjudging the tennis ball can become a major issue. As I see the tennis ball coming to me from my opponent, if I run too close, my base is too close, I'm not going to have a lot of swing space to hit that tennis ball. So again, it's very challenging, and tennis is one of those sports that's very difficult to learn, except that when you spend time, intentional time practicing, you can begin to build the foundation that's going to help you to become a better tennis player as you spend that time on the tennis court. So again, focus on your base and make sure that as you're moving to the ball, you're creating a very effective base to help you build balance throughout that entire stroke. Okay, so here's again another reason why you're not balanced in answering that question, and that's because you're playing too upright. You're playing tall. And so in this position, again, there are times when tennis players attempt to hit the ball, and many times successfully, but they're just playing too upright. Tennis is the kind of sport that requires a good athletic position, okay? And so as you're playing, you may even get away with, especially moving forward, of hitting a ball in an upright position. But the more I move side to side and have to deal with different balls coming my way, and I'm upright, I'm going to begin to lose control of that tennis ball again. So it's going to be very important to understand that one of the challenges or problems again for not being balanced is playing tennis too upright. We should be as much athletic as we can by being in a position where there's a slight posture leaning forward when playing tennis. Okay? All right, so a couple more things here, and one of them is really challenging. And one of the challenges for not being in balance is you're moving lazily. That doesn't mean you're lazy. You're moving lazily. And all that means is you're attempting to conserve energy. So what I want you to do is really focus on working hard to get yourself in position to be balanced versus just kind of moving lazily. So it's going to be very important that you again understand balance comes when you move with aggression. And the last thing I want to point out today is that sometimes your leg strength can be the difference as well. When moving to hit a tennis ball, I've got lots of leg strength on the front leg. If my leg is not very strong, I'll fall over on myself. So spend some time doing some exercises to strengthen your legs, and that's going to help improve your game as well. Hopefully you enjoyed this segment today, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the future. But if you enjoyed it, please visit us, denvergov.org/recreation. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Thank you, and enjoy your day.